Hello everyone, I'm Yvonne, a children's librarian here at the Manchester City Library, and welcome to our Spring STEAM Powered Stories. These are story times that are aimed at grades 3 to 6 that have a science, technology, engineering, art, or math component. For copyright reasons, our stories are only going to be read in person at the library, so please visit our website to register for our stories if you would like to join us. In-person attendance also guarantees a craft kit, which will have almost everything you need for our crafts, which we do each session. And we will also do an extra fun activity that we don't get to do together online. Those can be really fun things like slime or some cool moving crafts or something that's just a little bit hard to show you guys here, but we are going to do in person. But I did want to continue posting these videos here so we can do as many crafts and activities to share with as many people as possible. That being said, let's get into this week's STEAM Powered story. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's STEAM Powered story, where we're going to be talking a little bit about geology. So geology is a science that deals with the history of the Earth and its life, especially as recorded in rocks. And we definitely have some really cool books here at the Manchester City Library if you guys want to learn about the Earth and about geology. I have a small selection here. So remember that if you guys come in person to STEAM Powered Stories, we will read at least one book about our subject every week. But if you cannot make it to in person, then I'm very glad to have you join us here online today, where we will be covering a couple of activities and our craft, which is available to pick up in person if you are not able to come in person but can make it to the library later. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get our supplies for our very first activity. All right, everyone, and welcome to our first activity, where we are going to be making sand art sedimentary layers. So what you need for this is a small to medium jar. You're going to need well, I have colored sand, which is, of course, probably the most traditional way to do this. But if you have something else that you can use, like I've seen colored rice, or even just different colored layers of soil, or so dirt, as long as it doesn't have any bugs or anything in it. But yeah, so what you want is we just want something that has very small pieces, very small particulate matter like sand, in different colors that we can see. And as long as you have that in your small to medium jar. And then we also have some small items that we can put into our jar that you don't mind just being stuck in the jar, at least for a little while. So I've got some different colored beads, and I also have actually some very small rocks. So what we're gonna do now, what's also helpful for this is if you guys have a funnel. Now you can either look in your kitchen or ask a grown-up if there is a funnel in the house that you can use. Otherwise, you can also make a paper funnel to help you get your sand or other sedimentary layers into your container. I'm just going to pour because I'm gonna trust myself not to spill, and we'll see if I end up spilling or not. But what we're gonna do first is, let's see, I think I'm going to start with one of my beads, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it into my jar. And for this, when I put in my beads, I'm going to want to put them close to the glass just because I want to be able to see them once we put our sand in. I'm just going to pour some in. I'm going to want to pour enough in so that it covers the first layer of beads. So as you can see, I can still see some of my beads because I put against glass. Now we're going to do our second layer. So let's put in, just going to put in a few more cool things in here. And I've got my second color that I'm going to pour in. Okay. I'm going to put in one more. All right, so you can see through my jar, I have my different beads and the different layers of sand that obviously got put in at different times, right? So how does this represent the earth and geology and what is happening in our jar? So sedimentary rocks, which we're sort of showing here, form through erosion, which is the wearing down of the rocks and ground through wind and water and ice. And so they turn it into soil or sediment. And then that sediment or soil gets deposited back onto the earth, and it builds up in layers. And then the pressure of the dirt and sediment on top of it compresses it down until it forms basically rock all over again. And while that's happening, you can get really cool things that get stuck into that dirt and that sediment, and then they get buried. And that's how we get fossils and other really cool things that we can dig up in the earth. And so, just like in our jar, we can tell kind of when the fossils or the other cool things got buried by which layer of the sediment that we can find them in, right? So, so if we start digging from the top of our jar, we'll go through my blue layer first, and then we'll find this white star. And we'll be like, oh, okay, so this must have been buried not too long ago because it's really near the top of the earth. And then if we find, oh, you can see this one is actually a white heart. And we're like, oh, well, this is in the same blue layer. So it was probably buried about the same time as this white star. And then if we dig further in, we can find this rock. And we're like, okay, well, this rock is here. And it's kind of close to the star, but it's in a different color or a different layer of our sedimentary rock. So it's probably buried in a different time, even if they're kind of close together. And then we can dig all the way down and we find these letter beads in our orange-red sand. And we're like, okay, so those are really old because they were down there real deep. So I hope that you guys enjoyed making sand art sedimentary layers with me, where we get both some cool sand art in jars, and also we get to think a little bit about how the earth that we stand on is created, and also what it means when we dig down into the earth to find things. So I hope that you guys enjoyed, because I know I did. All right, everyone, welcome to our Candy Core Samples activity. So for this, you're going to need some candy bars. You're going to want some with some interesting ingredients and layers, and you're going to want them to be a little bit soft. You're going to want a clear straw, a pair of scissors, and a plate or napkin to help keep your surface clean. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up our candy bars. And we are going to take our clear straw and we are going to use our straw to poke through the candy bars because we are going to drill out a core sample. Now you might want to get some help from like an adult or an older kid because this can take a little bit of patience. What we're going to do is we're going to put it onto the core and then we're just going to press and kind of wiggle it down until we get all the way through. Okay. And then I think it's easiest is once you get through is to go ahead and cut right in between your core sample and your candy bar and then just pull that right back off. So we've got core sample here and we're going to repeat that for each of the candy bars. So now we can look at the different core samples of our candy bars and we can compare them to each other and to the candies that we have. You can also cut a cross section into your candy. So if you want to get an adult or a responsible older kid to just cut the candy bar in half so you can see the different layers of the candy bar and then compare that to your core sample. Just to get a better feel of exactly what has happened. But what has happened is that the candy bars, at least those ones that we've chosen, have multiple different layers. So each ingredient kind of has a different stripe inside of the candy bar. When we take our core sample with our straw, we can see the different layers inside of the sample, right? And we can see what each one is kind of made up of. And a really fun experiment is if you have a friend or a family member to do this with, you can have your core samples and you can label them from which one you took it from. And then if you have a friend or a family member take your straw and they can hide from you which candy they take a sample from, and then you can compare the one that they have taken and see which one you think it is just by looking at the samples you already have and then the new sample that they give you. And this is really cool because geologists who study geology will use large drills to take round core samples, just like we have done with our straw, and look at samples of soil, earth, or even ice. And they look at the core samples for the different layers to tell them things about the Earth's history, like the climate, how hot or cold it was, what kind of animals lived there, what kind of air, what was in the air at the time that the samples were taken. It's really, really cool. They can even figure out when volcanoes erupted by looking at ash layers inside of their core samples. So this, even though we are just looking at candy, can really help us imagine what scientists, what geologists look at and can learn from. And like I said, it can also be like a really cool, fun activity if you have a partner to work with. I think it'd be even really cool to try and get multiple samples on top of each other and then try and figure out which one came first, right? So I think that this is a really cool project. I hope that you guys enjoy and I hope that you have fun with your extra candy after you're done. And I will get everything ready for our craft. Hello everyone, and welcome to the craft portion of our STEAM Powered Stories, Geology Edition. So as usual, we have our craft kits. If you came in person, you will have gotten a craft kit while you were doing our STEAM Powered Stories. If you were not able to visit us for in-person STEAM Powered Stories, but you can make it to the Manchester City Library at least the week of our Steam Powered story and before we run out. We will have them in the entryway to the children's room, which is also our accessible entrance right off of our parking lot. So they will be waiting for you while supplies last. Inside of our bag, we will have our instructions with a little bit extra on the back. We're going to have a small thing of liquid food coloring. We're going to have 2 egg carton cups. And we are going to have some rock salt. Now I'm going to leave the rock salt in the bag while we do this. We're also going to need from home some glue. You may need some scissors, and you might want some tape, depending. So we have our egg carton cups, and we're going to want to make sure that those kind of go together. If you need to do some trimming, go ahead and do some trimming. And we're going to put those here. Then we have our rock salt in a bag. And we are going to color this with our liquid food coloring to make our quick egg cup geodes. Now I do want to tell you that geodes are basically these round rocks that when you crack them open, they often have really beautiful crystals growing inside of them. And how that happens is we've got some really hard rocks, right? And then inside of the rock, there is softer rocks or like dirt. And then as water comes through the soil, it goes in between the harder rocks and washes away all of the softer rock inside. So we've got a rock that is together but is hollow inside. And then the water continues coming down through the rock. And as the water comes down, it starts leaving behind small crystals on the inside of our rock. And over time, those crystals build up inside of the hollow space until it's either full or at least mostly full and has some pretty crystals growing inside. And that's when we can dig up the rock and crack it open and find the beautiful crystals growing inside of our geode. Now we're not going to actually grow the crystals in this craft because that can take a really long time, depending on the crystals you're growing. Instead, we're going to do the really quick geode version, where we're going to take our salt rock crystals, which are form themselves, and we're going to take our liquid food coloring, and I'm doing this on a protected surface as usual. I'm just going to go ahead and pour my food coloring into my bag with my rock salt. And I'm going to make sure that's tightly closed. And then I'm going to shake it to distribute some of that color. As you guys can see, that's actually gotten us a pretty nice blue color. So we've got our crystals going on here. Now I'm going to take the glue and I'm going to pour a little bit into our egg carton cup. You paint all the sides of it, and I'm going to do that again on the other side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get our colored rock salt into my egg cup, and I'm going to put them together just like we tried at the beginning, remember, to make sure that they close all right. And this is when, if you have tape, You can tape around the middle of your egg cartons if you just want to make sure that they stay together and we don't get rock salt across your surface while we shake them. Next is we're going to shake them back and forth. You don't have to shake super hard. Okay, and once we've done that, we're going to open up and you can check to see how it's going. Okay, and then we're going to pour the extra back into our bag. And then we are going to let our really quick egg carton geos dry. And then they are going to end up looking like this. Of course, these are not dry yet, so I'm handling them carefully. But yeah, they look really beautiful. And then once they're dry, you can display them and show everyone your really cool egg carton geodes. You can also end up painting the outside if you want as well to look more like rocks. But I think this is a really fun way to get some really fast, sparkly, crystal looking things. Maybe at a different point in Steam Powered Stories, we'll come back to the crystal idea and actually grow some of our own. But this is a great, really fast shortcut to having something that looks like we grew the crystals ourselves and is still really fun to make. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me here for our online Steam Powered Stories. I hope that you enjoyed some of the information that we learned today and some of our activities and craft. Remember that we do have more books on geology and crystals and minerals here at the Manchester City Library, if that's something you want to learn a little bit more about. I'm going to have some more book suggestions just after this. And I also want to remind everyone that we do have our in-person Steam Powered Stories, which we will have in 2 weeks is going to be our next session, which is going to be May 10th. At the very end of this presentation, I'm going to give you a little clue on what that might be about. Because if you do come in person, we will, of course, have some books to read, as well as a couple of extra activities that we can do together, and of course our craft that you'll get in person. But I hope that you had fun here online as well, and you had fun doing your activities at home with your friends or family, or even just by yourself, because science is fun no matter where you do it or who you do it with. All right, I will see you guys in 2 weeks, either in person or here online. Bye!